What if the biggest breakthrough of your life is waiting on the other side of a step you're too afraid to take? Most people are waiting for certainty. They want guarantees. They want signs. They want perfect timing. They want to know exactly how everything will turn out before they move. But that is not how faith usually works. Faith does not begin with full clarity. Faith often begins with a decision, a step, a risk, a moment where you move even though your mind is full of questions. In fact, some of the greatest victories in the Bible did not start with certainty. They started with a single word. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. 1 Samuel 14:6. Those words were spoken by Jonathan when he was facing an enemy army with only his armor-bearer beside him. There was no guarantee of victory, no detailed plan, no promise of the exact outcome, just a possibility that God might move. But Jonathan understood something powerful. God often responds to movement. If he stayed in the camp, nothing would change. If he stepped forward, something might happen. So he moved, and that single step triggered one of the most unexpected victories in Israel's history. This is what I call the perhaps strategy. It's the moment you stop waiting for perfect conditions and start trusting God with imperfect ones. You apply for the opportunity, even if you might be rejected. You start the business, even if it might fail. You obey the calling, even if you don't understand the full path yet. Because sometimes the door only opens after you start walking toward it. So before we go deeper into this message, I want you to do something powerful. If you are ready to stop waiting for certainty and start moving in faith, type this in the comments right now. I will move even if I'm afraid. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is movement in spite of it. In the book of 1 Samuel chapter 14, Israel was facing a serious problem. Their enemy, the Philistines, had a powerful army. They had more soldiers, better weapons, stronger positions. Meanwhile, Israel was struggling. Many of their soldiers were hiding. Some were discouraged. Some had already begun to lose hope. The atmosphere was heavy with fear. Israel was outnumbered. They were afraid. And nobody was making a move. Even the king, Saul, was waiting under a tree with his army. Everyone was frozen, waiting for the right moment, waiting for a clear sign, waiting for someone else to do something first. Everyone except one man. His name was Jonathan, the son of the king. Jonathan looked at the same problem everyone else saw, but he thought differently. Where others saw impossibility, he saw opportunity. One day, Jonathan turned to the young man carrying his armor and said something extraordinary. He said, "Come, let us go over to the outpost of these uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf." Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. Think about that for a moment. Jonathan did not say, "God guaranteed this will work." He did not say, "I received a perfect plan." He did not say, "I know exactly what will happen." Instead, he used a word most people are afraid to build their life on. Perhaps, not certainty, not control, not a guaranteed outcome, just faith mixed with courage. But Jonathan understood something most people miss. God does not always move when people are comfortable. Sometimes God moves when someone is bold enough to step forward first. And Jonathan was willing to be that person. So he took a step, and that step would soon trigger a miracle no one in Israel expected. This is the part many people miss. Jonathan moved forward without full certainty. He believed God was able to act, but he did not sit still, waiting for perfect clarity before taking the first step. He did not demand a complete blueprint. He did not ask for every detail of the outcome. He simply believed that God was powerful enough to move if he stepped out in faith. And this is exactly where many people get stuck today. Not because they lack potential, not because they lack ability, but because they are waiting for a level of certainty that life rarely gives. They say, "I will start when I'm sure. I will move when the fear is gone. I will try when everything finally makes sense." But here is the truth most people discover too late. Clarity often comes after movement, not before it. Fear does not always disappear before the step. Confidence does not always arrive before the action. Sometimes the step itself is what awakens the courage. That is why faith does not always come wrapped in guarantees. Sometimes faith looks like uncertainty mixed with trust. Sometimes faith sounds like this: "I don't know exactly how this will turn out, but I believe God is with me." It is the quiet decision to move forward even when your mind is full of questions, even when the road ahead is unclear. Faith whispers something powerful in the middle of that uncertainty. It says, "God is bigger than the outcome." And because of that, you are willing to take the step anyway. Faith says, perhaps God will show up. Perhaps he will open a door you cannot see yet. Perhaps he will create a way where there seems to be none. Perhaps the step you are afraid to take is the one that triggers the miracle. And sometimes, perhaps, is all faith needs to begin. Right now, there are people watching this who feel stuck, not because you lack potential, not because you lack intelligence, not because you lack opportunity, but because something inside you is fighting a quiet battle between faith and fear. You feel something pulling you forward in life, a nudge, an idea, a dream that refuses to completely go away. But fear keeps pulling you back. Maybe it's the idea of starting something new, a business that has been sitting in your mind for months, maybe years. Maybe it's starting a YouTube channel, sharing your voice, your message, your story with the world. Maybe it's stepping into a new path that feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable, a big decision that could change the direction of your life. Or maybe it's something even deeper. Maybe it's learning how to trust God again after a season of disappointment, after prayers that felt unanswered, after doors that closed, after moments that made you question whether trying again is even worth it. And in those moments, fear starts whispering its questions. What if it fails? What if you look foolish? What if people judge you? What if it doesn't work? Fear always focuses on the worst possible outcome. It tries to convince you that staying where you are is safer than stepping forward. But there is another question that fear never wants you to ask. What if God moves? What if the moment you decide to step forward, heaven begins to respond? What if the opportunity you have been praying for is waiting for your courage? What if your step of faith opens a door you cannot see yet? What if your willingness to move, even while afraid, creates momentum you never expected? And what if the breakthrough you've been praying about, the change you've been hoping for, the miracle you've been waiting to see, is waiting on the other side of your step? Sometimes the distance between where you are and where God wants to take you is just one courageous decision. Jonathan and his armor-bearer began to climb toward the enemy outpost. Just 2 men. No large army. No strategic advantage. No guarantee of success. In front of them was an entire Philistine garrison. Soldiers, weapons, strength. From a human perspective, it looked completely impossible. Anyone watching from a distance would have thought the same thing. This will never work. But Jonathan understood something powerful. God does not need perfect odds to perform a miracle. So step by step, they moved forward, climbing the rocky path toward the enemy. 2 men, moving with courage, powered by a simple belief. Perhaps the Lord will act. And the moment they stepped forward, something incredible happened. God stepped in. The Bible tells us that confusion suddenly broke out among the Philistines. Panic spread through the camp. What started as a calm and confident army quickly turned into chaos. Soldiers began to turn against each other. Fear swept through the entire garrison. And what began with 2 men and a perhaps turned into a massive victory for Israel. An entire army began to collapse. Not because Jonathan had a perfect plan, but because he had the courage to move first. And all of it started with one simple decision, one moment of boldness, one act of faith: move. Some miracles only reveal themselves after you move, not before. Some answers from God do not appear while you are waiting in comfort. They appear while you are walking in faith. Some doors only open after the first step, not while you're standing still, because movement is often the language of faith. It is the moment where belief turns into action. And that is where many of life's greatest turning points begin. Your perhaps moment might be the beginning of everything. The moment where you stop waiting for perfect certainty and start trusting God with the unknown. Perhaps God will guide you. Perhaps He will give you wisdom you didn't have before. Perhaps He will connect you with the right people. Perhaps He will open a door that no one else can open. Perhaps He will create a path where there seems to be none. But here is the truth you must remember. You will never discover what God might do if you never move. You will never see the door if you never walk toward it. You will never experience the miracle if fear keeps you standing still. Sometimes the difference between a life of regret and a life of breakthrough is simply the courage to take one step forward. And that step begins with a single decision. So today, I want to ask you one question. What step have you been afraid to take? What dream have you been postponing? What opportunity have you been hesitating to pursue? What act of faith have you been delaying because the outcome feels uncertain? Because maybe, just maybe, your perhaps is the beginning of your breakthrough. The decision you make today could open a door tomorrow that you never imagined possible. So if this message spoke to you, I want you to do something powerful. Write this in the comments right now. I will move even if I'm afraid. Declare it, type it, own it, because courage grows the moment you commit to movement. And if this video encouraged you, make sure you subscribe for more biblical motivation that strengthens your faith, challenges your thinking, and helps you grow into the person God is calling you to become. Because sometimes the greatest victories, the biggest breakthroughs, and the most powerful stories of faith begin with one small word, perhaps.